One question I get all the time about working in Git repos is how do I remove all the files that should be ignored now that I've gone ahead and updated my gitignore file itself? So as an example, if you were to create a Unity project, and inside the Unity project it's got a library directory, logs, obj, and other folders and files in here that shouldn't be actually committed to your repo. And then after you commit these things, you then put a .gitignore file in here that it should be ignoring all these things. Well, just putting the ignore file here won't actually remove all of these files from being tracked in your repo. One thing to know is that your .gitignore files only prevent new files from being committed. If Git is already tracking a file and keeping track of it within the system, it will continue doing that even if it now meets the requirements of, or meets the specifications of being ignored. As an example, here's this oops.txt, and let's pretend this is a text file that I shouldn't have committed. And then after I've committed it and added to my repo, I'm going to right click here and I'm going to go and create my new .gitignore. And in my gitignore file, I'm going to say that this should ignore oops.txt. Now the thing to note is back here in fork, my Git client, my gitignore file is there, ready to go. I can stage this, I can commit it, right? But my oops.txt is still there in my directory, and it's actually still being tracked by Git. Well, there's a very simple way to essentially tell Git to stop tracking anything that the gitignore file would tell it to ignore. And to do this, we can do it through two very simple commands on the command prompt. So we're going to open a new command prompt. You type cmd after you hit the Windows key, hit enter. Here's my command prompt. I'm going to change directory to the location of my repo. In this case, it's right on my desktop. And then once I'm in the directory for my repo, I'm going to run two commands. The first one is git rm-r, which is for recursive. So rm is remove and -r is recursively, -- cached, and then a period at the end, which essentially tells Git to remove all of like the tracked files essentially, and then I'm going to hit enter here. This is going to tear through my entire repo and it's going to remove anything that it shouldn't be tracking. And then the next thing I'll do is git space add with a period on the end and hit enter, and then this will go back and commit everything. Now if I hop back to my client, you can see it's removed all the files that are now ignored by gitignore. These two very small commands can help you out in a pinch, especially after you've committed large projects or large folders. You update your gitignore, you run these things, and then you're good to go. The one thing that I will note is that before you run these commands, you absolutely should have all of your work committed and pushed up to your server before you run them. These commands do delete files or will stop files from being tracking, so you want to make sure that everything that you've done, that's work that you've completed, has been completely committed to your repo before executing these things.